Hi Whiskers! This week we're going to do a book written by someone within our own community, or technically AuthorTube. This is The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci. I read the audiobook version of this. So even though we know who she is and what she thinks, death of the author still applies. So getting into it, the genre is YA fantasy. Although there are minimal fantasy elements to this, it's mostly medieval type of time period and very little world building. It's very, I don't want to say basic, but I guess it is. And then there's one person with magic, who is the savior. Her dynasty was born many years ago, and since that dynasty has been reigning, the savior has basically given the land life. Without her, the land is a desert. Since her birth, the land has been fertile and able to sustain life. So the savior is legit these people's reason for existing, and that's why she's the monarch, obviously. And the premise of this book basically starts with a tournament for her hand, because it is time for the savior to marry again, to have a new savior baby. And we have to find out who the right man would be, because the savior is always a woman. And then style and pacing, I'm just going to kind of skip over because it's very generic, very middle ground. There's nothing big to say on that. It's basic pacing as you would expect, and the style, it's nothing to write home about. Sugar is definitely the start of the book. Not the very start, but just as we're getting into the tournament. The nicknames, our main character is nicknamed the Artist, and that start, it's really impactful the first time they start the tournament. The first few deaths, it's powerful, and I think that's definitely the biggest strength in the book, is those first couple of scenes of the tournament. Then the part I really didn't like, the vinegar, has to be the romance. Now in YA fantasy, it's an unwritten law that you need a romance, and sometimes it feels like shoehorned in there. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like the story wanted to be a romance more than it wanted to be a fantasy, which is fine, but this story would have been better off without it, I feel. And it's definitely the weakest part of the plot, and it kind of destroyed some of the characters for me. I did not enjoy the romance. So, would I recommend? Here I'd like to stray a bit off of my death of the author philosophy. So if you're a fan of Jenna Moreci's channel, like I am, I will link her below, then you know that she puts out advice on how to write and how to write well once a week. And if you look at her advice and you can compare that to what she's written, I think it's a really valuable tool to kind of figure out how to apply a lot of the advice that we get, and even more so to actually see if you like that advice in practice. Because in theory, all her advice is great. In practice, I don't know if she pulled it off everywhere. This book is 3 stars from me. If you're going to get it just for the enjoyment, read the first half. The first half is great. There's like a plot twist, and after that, things just kind of go downhill, and I swear, the first half, I could not stop reading. I kept reading the book. I loved it, and then it just like... And there's no satisfying conclusion, in my opinion. So then, we're finally going to get into spoilers, because most of what I want to talk about happens in the second half of this book anyway. Moving on. Okay, so the premise is this. Tobias is an artist and a farmer and basically a peasant, and he has a twin sister who is crippled. I don't think she can walk. I think that's the extent of her disability. And his whole motivation when he hears about this tournament for the Savior's Hand is that he imagines what he could do with the prize money um, to better his sister's life, which such a noble goal and motivation. And I love Tobias for that, and for his kind of softer, sensitive side, the artist kind of stereotype. The princess needs a husband, and he goes into the tournament. And the tournament is at the beginning bloody and brutal, and they kill each other for no reason. And they go down into like this labyrinth, and then every day they have to overcome a challenge or a puzzle and see who survives. And then every night, two nurses come to heal who hasn't died yet. And one of these nurses starts a relationship with Tobias. And at the beginning, it's very much a friendship, and I very much enjoyed that part of the relationship. So that's the premise. Tobias is here fighting for his life every day, sort of having a friendship on the side, but his main motivation is his sister and getting the gold for her so that she can live a better life, because he has seen her suffering and she deserves better. And maybe he can get himself some new paints. That would be great too. And that's a great premise, but it doesn't last too long. After he's presented into the crowd, there's blood and there's death and there's bloody interesting puzzles. And it continues on, and I would not have minded. I know it would have been maybe a bit... I know it might have been a bit predictable for the story to just kind of keep on at that pace and keep on going forward, and we can see who wins. And I would have loved it for it. But then the story decides to do a plot twist. And I did not see it coming, because I kind of didn't want to see it coming. Plot twist, one of the nurse girls who comes in every night, I can't remember her name. One of the nurse girls that comes in every night is the savior. The savior decided she wanted to get to know the man who was supposed to be her future husband better before she is just forced to marry him, essentially. So she snuck in, and she's now healing them at night. And then with their growing relationship, Tobias all of a sudden gets these superpowers. The magic is not explained at all. And it's essentially like the savior's blessing. And all of a sudden, he is OP. He was struggling. He was like the underdog for the longest time. And now he's OP. He's crushing the competition. And he just gets this rage. And he becomes like a complete berserker. And it just... So that's where the tournament plot went downhill. And then we're kind of ripped out of the tournament. And we have to deal with the castle's politics. The world kind of becomes like a high school full of killers. The drama is petty, and the conflict seems shallow, and I don't know what the reason is. People are just kind of spiteful. And the principal, aka her father, is just a bad man. It just seemed lackluster to me. I would have loved to stay in the tournament setting and just fight it out till the end, but now our gladiators have to go to school, apparently. So it all goes down, kind of goes downhill from here. Tobias gains more and more power over time. There are some parts where his magic is just ridiculous, which it's assumed because he's so close to the princess the whole time that she is rubbing off on him and her savior magic is coming off on him. And it's like, it makes for cool fight scenes. The fight scenes are well written. But it's just... I would have loved to see Tobias using his artist's eye or his knowledge or his wit to kind of beat down these arrogant assholes. But he doesn't get the chance because girlfriend just gives him magic. And then the sister has also moved aside for this new girlfriend. Their relationship is semi-official. They've been kissing and stuff. And at one point, he even sees his sister in the crowd, and he never thinks, I'm doing this for you. Not really. He just doesn't want his sister to see him die. But at the end of the story, he completely forgets about his sister. He completely forgets about giving her a better life. I think because the evil people are the people in power, and the king could definitely track down his sister and hurt her. And he doesn't seem to care about that because he just loves this princess so damn much. And I really didn't like that. Love conquers all, apparently, even your love for your sister. So let's get into the characters. I'm not going to talk about the side characters too much. It's not that they're two-dimensional, but they're not three-dimensional either. They're like 2D with shading. Um, they have bits to them, but not enough to be called well-rounded, I'd say. And there were just way too many to expect that anyway, so it's fine. So let's talk about the two main characters then, which would be the two lovebirds, Tobias and the princess. Tobias is a new character for the fantasy setting. He's artsy and sensitive and really oddly feminist for the time period. Like, I need an explanation of why this man is so damn woke. He just knows the right things to say at every moment, and he has no like toxic masculinity. He has no just intrinsic feelings about what a woman should be, which, you know, those things are socially constructed, and he did not grow up in the 21st century. I don't know how he broke down these biases all on his lonesome inside his mind. This man is a social justice god. It is something new, and it was not unpleasant to read about for the most part. It just kind of felt a bit forced. Not that it was forced that he was like that, but it was forced that so many opportunities came up for him to prove what a feminist man he is. And I don't know, it just didn't mesh with the time period and the setting too well. So then we get to the princess. Now, she starts off insanely powerful, obviously. The savior has the magic that can heal the whole land. But her powers are confusing because they're never explained. I'm not even sure she understands them. It just kind of happens. Which makes sense if there's only one person in the world with this magic. How much can she know? And at the beginning, she's a good character. She's cool, she's calm, she's confident. She kills a man for slapping her butt. It all makes sense. But then when the plot twist happens, she twists. She completely changes. She doesn't know what she wants, and she keeps kind of causing drama by not speaking. She's one of those people who really, you need to communicate. And every time Tobias is begging her, yeah, by the way, not hot. Tobias keeps begging her for everything. Consent is one thing, but if you're begging and you have to ask more than once, she probably doesn't want it, or she's being a bitch. Either way, get out. I did not like the begging. I could not ship this romance anymore when he started to beg her and plead her to just love him. It's no. So this is the princess's fault. She's selfish and confusing and very jealous of any other woman Tobias comes into contact with, even though he's forced into contact with those women. And she's just bad at communicating. And then every time he asks you, but why didn't you tell me? Then she's like, I don't have to tell you everything. I'm my own woman. It's like, yes, but his life is at risk. He is putting his life on the line for you, though. Like, the least you could do is open your mouth. So I ended up not liking her, and then I didn't like Tobias for liking her. Because even though I only saw a glimpse of his sister, I like her better. So I didn't like the way this was going. I didn't like the romance, and so the second half of the book, which was very focused on that romance, just kind of killed it for me. I did like the final fight scenes, with the magic involved and everything. It was badass. The fight scenes are well written. That's why the whole tournament was my favorite part, but then it just fell apart with the romance, which got so much focus at the end. And again, I'm gonna say this, Tobias just kind of forgets about his sister, and I have to question, is the magic causing him to act like this? Because I would not put it past the princessa and her selfishness to do that. And there's no internal conflict about it. It's not like he has this big decision to make and he's struggling with it. Am I going to risk my sister's life for this girl I met like a couple of weeks ago? Or am I going to leave the girl and go for my sister? He never really considers it. He just loves Princess now. And I think her name is Layla. Why is Layla ringing a bell? I don't know. I know book two is from her perspective, and that may shed some light on her character, but it would not shed light on why the hell Tobias would accept this level of disrespect and just selfishness from her. His motivation is gone, and so is mine to continue the series. It's 3 stars. It was definitely not a horrible read. It just, if I don't believe in the romance, I'm not going to believe in these characters going forward. They've lost, yeah, they've lost me.
What's interesting about this is that a character who switches motivation and that's their arc, it's often called the lie the character believes. And in this case, the lie is that his sister is worth fighting for. And he doesn't go through an arc so much as just like a sharp drop off a cliff. Um, so I think that's definitely the biggest weakness. If we could have been convinced that the sister was no longer worth fighting for and Layla, the princess, was worth it, I don't know. Maybe it would have been a different story. But Princessa could have dealt with her own nonsense, or at least treated people risking their lives for her with some respect. And honestly, the sister could have just been respected a lot more. It's like she just kind of is forgotten or disappears throughout the story, and that's terrible. So I think that's probably the core flaw that just killed this book for me, which I really enjoyed in the first half. Okay, tata whiskers. See you guys next week.